Hi guys. Well, this is the 16K Spectrum with the 48K plus motherboard in it. And this is the Plus with the 16K motherboard in it. I was that desperate to have a 48K machine with a rubber keyboard. Maybe a little sad, I don't care. Now, there are a few feet missing on the bottom of this, so I've got some spare feet here. So basically the project today is simply to take these motherboards and swap them back over again. Now that I have got an actual rubber keyboard 48K Spectrum, I don't need this situation anymore, so I can get rid of this dangling reset button at last. Now, swapping the motherboards is a fairly straightforward process, but I will show you how it's done if you open one of these, what to expect to see inside it, and how to connect up the keyboard, etc. Now, this is the easy bit. It's all very straightforward, as you'll see. The 16K machine and 48K machine with the rubber keyboard has got 5 screws in the base, and the Plus model has 8. However, it's all very straightforward. Now, you'll probably notice on this machine that, apart from the fact that that thread's gone, hold on, we'll get there. Is that there are 3 feet missing, and that one has seen better days. So they are all going to be replaced. Just a tip for anyone who doesn't generally work with electrical repair and restoration. A little hint: always keep the screws for each machine together in clusters. These 5 are all going in the same place on the table. Because it really is amazing how easily screws are lost. So these 5 in one neat pile behind the machine they belong to. Now, as I open this, actually you're better really to turn it right way up, you will see that there are 2 ribbon cables holding things together. These are the keyboard cables. They just unplug very easily, but do be careful, don't be too rough with them. This is one of the new membranes, as I said, so it should last a while. And there's the motherboard. If only PCs were as easy as this. 1 screw holding in the motherboard. Again, place that directly behind the machine and carefully lift out the motherboard. There it is, that's the 48K Plus motherboard. I'll put that aside just now. And now start on the actual Plus casing. which has the 16K motherboard in it. Now there are springs missing in this for the stands. I will be replacing these before I put it on eBay. That's why the stands are a bit floppy just now. But again, I'm putting the screws behind where the machine will be on the table. It's at the right of the table, so the screws are going on the right. That way there can be no confusion when it comes to reassembling later on. It's really just basic common sense. This one's a bit tricky. Oh, incidentally, there's one screw at the back of the Plus, this one here. This one is slightly longer than the others. It's worth bearing in mind. Same applies right way up before opening. And again, you'll see the ribbons holding it together. Now these ribbon cables, on the Plus and on the original rubber keyboard 16 and 48K models, are in exactly the same place. But be warned, the 128K models, including the Plus 2 and Plus 3, the arrangement of the ribbon cables for the keyboard is different. So they are not compatible with these models. Again, you just unplug the ribbons. And there you go. There's the motherboard there. And in this case, the screw holding it in place is actually in the corner. There is no central screw at all. But don't worry, because the 16, 48 and Plus models have all got the hole here and the central hole. So you can quite happily swap 16K Spectrum motherboards with 48, whether it's the standard rubber keyboard or the Plus models. Now again, this screw is going beside where the machine is on the table towards the right, to avoid any confusion later on. Now that's the 16K motherboard. You'll probably notice that there are empty sockets. This could be upgraded to 48K in RAM, but it wouldn't have the speed of a real 48K machine. Really, the 16K models are good for not much. However, some people may have nostalgic pangs for it. I never had one. I started off with a 48K after I had the ZX81. Now, so this now simply slots into its original housing. a little bit tricky to align, but not impossible. The actual screws for the casing itself should line up, and if they do, then everything else is plain sailing. So I'll have placed this silver screw back in the centre, to hold its motherboard in place. Only ever screw finger tight, because you never know when you're going to need to take things apart again. I learned the hard way, you can over tighten things in a big way. Now, this, although it was a modern membrane I used, had a weird problem of these bits of the ribbon cables flapping out. I don't know what that's about. Normally they don't do that. And a little bit of double-sided sticky tape could solve that problem if it bothers you, but it folds up the way. So there's going to be no conduction problems. Nothing will short. So don't worry about that if that happens. Just slot the keyboard into the motherboard. Again, a little bit of patience. It's not a race. Nobody's going to lose. Just take your time. Because these ribbon cables, even on the modern membranes, are fragile. And it's just not worth rushing such a delicate job. Oh, that's, by the way, a good way of identifying a 16K motherboard from a 48K. The heatsink on the 16K is small and runs down by the speaker at the front. You can see that there. Whereas on the 48K it runs along the back at this risen bit of the casing. It's a good way of identifying them. Plus, the 16K generally has these empty sockets. This is an issue 1 board. Now, because I kept the screws behind this machine, I can immediately set about putting it back together without any worry of any screws being missing. It sounds like you shouldn't really need to tell people that, but you'd be amazed how many people lose screws because they just leave them randomly lying around and then they phone up people like me and say, "Oh, I've lost my screws, what do I do?" As if I can wave a magic wand, you know. If only. Again, only finger tight. You don't need to over tighten these screws, because if you do, and you need to repair it again at some point in the future, you're not going to be able to open it without damaging the screws and possibly stripping the thread. And if you do that, you're in all kinds of trouble. One reassembled 16K Spectrum. And here's the motherboard, as I've said, of the Plus, which is 48K, and as you can see, as I said about the heatsink going along the back, on the 16K it goes down there between that capacitor and the speaker. It basically slots down that way. Because there are a lot of people, and be warned about this, selling 16K Spectrums on eBay but advertising them as 48K. there are several ways, I'll go into this in later videos, of finding out whether a machine is 16 or 48K without even opening them. But, you know, be on the lookout for that. Okay, if I watched what I was doing I might get on better. Okay, right. Now this reset button simply slots in here quite neatly. And the top half of the case holds it in place. I'll just line that up with the casing holes again. And like I say, this corner screw holds the motherboard to the bottom of the casing. Sometimes there's more screws in the Plus model holding the motherboard in place. On this one there was only the one. Sometimes there's two, sometimes three, sometimes four. Now, don't be tempted to over tighten these, because that will hold it in place quite securely. Now just to show you where the sockets were in the 16K model, there are chips directly soldered onto the board on the 48K. Another good way to tell them apart. For those who are interested, that's a ULA, and that is the processor, the Z80 processor there, where all the magic happens. And of course there's your famous beeper right there. Now again, firstly you just slot the keyboard into place. This is again a new membrane. This one's better designed than the one in that machine. And it's just a matter of slotting the ribbons into the motherboard in the little sockets, and then carefully placing the casing back together again. Remember, longest screw, risen bit at the back. Now, I would say that opening a Spectrum keyboard is fun and games in itself. It's a bit of an adventure, because you never know what you're going to find jammed between these keys. I have opened Spectrums and found unspeakable things jammed between the keys. This very Plus model was mine. I've had it for years. I've had it since around, I think, 1984 or 5, I'm not certain. So there was no big nasty surprises, but I've repaired Spectrums for other people. And you find everything in there. Now remember that just a few days ago, a couple of days ago, was the ZX Spectrums 30th anniversary. I have found bits of pizza, bits of bread, spilt coffee, that for all I know could have been in there for anything between 25 to 30 years, which isn't pleasant. So you just never know what you're going to find under there. So I'd like to reassure everybody that with this Plus that I'm putting back together just now, I myself stripped the keyboard down key by key. I took every single key out, and I've given the whole keyboard and its interior a thorough clean. You'll be relieved to know. That's something I will say, you can rest assured if you buy a ZX Spectrum from me, there'll be nothing under these keys but fresh air, and what should be under them. You'll be in for no nasty surprises. You're not going to find somebody's 25-year-old burrito crumbs embedded in there, because I'll have dealt with that before selling it. Basically because I know how it feels to find such things in these machines, and it's not a pleasant experience, it really isn't. So, there you have it. A fully reassembled Spectrum Plus and 16K Spectrum, which will be going on eBay very soon. Now, as you can see, the escutcheon on this has come a bit loose. I'll be fixing that too. I'm still toying with the idea, if I can show you this, of replacing the escutcheon. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, that light's a bit glary. But there are occasional very minor blisters and chips here and there. But it's in very good condition overall. So we'll see. I may replace it with that modern made escutcheon, or I may just salvage this one with its bolder print. We'll see how it goes. But that is a good escutcheon for its age. Now to replace the feet. So here is the 16K model. A good way of identifying 16Ks other than the motherboard is the serial number. You can look these up on Google generally, and also they tend not to have the 48K sticker on them. Obviously they have no sticker at all, it's just plain on the bottom. This is 3 feet missing and 1 foot that has seen better days, so I'm going to take that one off too. They don't try and stick the new ones directly onto that, because this is all covered in adhesive and acetate, and this will stop the new ones from adhering properly. So give that a good clean first. White spirit will do, but be very careful not to let any go down the holes. But I tend to find that warm soapy water does every bit as well. I should add that the adhesive that they use is not heat resistant, so hot, well, like I say, warm soapy water does do the job. Just make sure you don't get any in the vents or the speaker holes, for obvious reasons. Right. And there we go. One clean foot hole. Now, replacing the feet is very easy, because the holes basically guide you. And as long as you're careful, you can't go wrong. So I've got 4 feet here. And they're just rubber pads. They're not self-adhesive. So use this stuff, which is a sort of double-sided sticky substance. It can be a bit hard to peel, so be warned about that. And as you can see, there's this little oval shape in the middle, and that's what we're going to use. And I tend to find the best way is to place the foot onto that oval shape as square as you can, and allow the foot to pull it off. It is tricky. It's very strong adhesive. Very strong. Be warned about that. And then you just place the, oops, little overlap there. You just place the foot into the rectangle and press it firmly. Hold it for a few seconds. I wish there were self-adhesive, it would help, but you know, this does fairly well. There's one foot in place. And you just do that with all the feet. Again, make sure both the feet and the plastic are clean, because dirt and dust will stop the adhesion from working properly. This is really tricky. I've been doing this a long time, and even I find it tricky today. I've been doing it since the 80s. It doesn't get any easier. But it's worth doing, because once the feet are in place, it looks great. This one's proving a little troublesome, but it should be okay. So that's these two done, and you'll notice that on the feet there is a sort of matte side and a glossy side. You put the adhesive onto the matte side. The glossy side is the part that touches the computer desk or whatever. Because the matte side obviously adheres better than the glossy one. Good firm press should help the adhesive stay in place. The theory is that this greaseproof paper should let go of the adhesive and let it stick to the feet. As you can see, sadly, this doesn't work very well in practice, and this is why this has always been a nightmare. This is why it would be better if you could get proper self-adhesive feet, because it's not like a double-sided sticky tape or anything. It is a glue. It's a goopy stuff. You know that stuff that they stick CDs and DVDs onto magazines with? It's basically that stuff. It's horrible. Slimy, sticky goop. Now, I should add that I'm no expert. I'm a musician by trade. This is what I do as a hobby. Okay, I'm a complete amateur, but I do okay. You know, that's probably the most successful. If you look at that, that's the adhesive as it should look in place. It's the only one that's worked properly so far, but never mind. And again, you just slide that into position in the little rectangular hole. And there we have it. Oops, it's a bit squint, but straighten. And that will dry and adhere quite well over time. So it's better than having no feet at all. It protects the base of the casing, which is what the original feet were for in the first place, and cosmetically it just looks better. So there you have it. One 16K Spectrum with its original motherboard back inside and decent feet on the bottom.